Hello. We just watched two videos. Um, so the first one was called Hans Rosling on HIV, and he just talked about how widespread it is. And then the second one was called Filthy Water Made Drinkable. And so that talks about environmental sustainability. So we're just going to go through and talk about how we felt about the videos, starting with the HIV one, and then we'll move on to the other. Go ahead.
Go for it.
All right. The HIV video or his presentation was really interesting. It's just interesting to see how over the 25 years everything has evolved. And I thought the most interesting part was how the countries in Africa accumulate a large portion of the HIV infected people in the world, and but that we shouldn't blanket statement that into just saying that Africa struggles the most with this. I think that we give it this reputation. We see all these countries that are struggling there, but we don't see the countries that are doing well there. And I think if we focus on what those other countries in Africa are doing well and spread that to the countries that aren't doing as well, we'd be able to help. I mean, America and Africa are very different. Europe and Africa are different. India, Asia, all these places are different. So it's hard to compare our procedures or plans, put them into Africa. But if we take the countries that are doing well in Africa and implement the things that they're doing into the countries right next to it, bordering it, or in that general area that have the same natural resources, they have the same environmental influences, or I don't even know how to say it, weather and things like that, and people and culture, that it would help really build them up and to bring them back to the level the rest of the world is on. Um, and then we would be able to support each other as a whole.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting um, how he compared different countries in Africa to like the U.S. and Salt Lake City and San Francisco. How very different, and the same goes for countries in Africa. So like you're saying, it's we can't make that blanket statement over all of Africa because there's lots of countries that are doing well. Like he said, Madagascar has about the same HIV infection rates as the U.S. So whereas in South Africa, there's really, really high infection rates. So I thought that was really interesting. Another thing is, I recently did a project on HIV for my microbiology class, and so I learned a lot about the virus and how it's transmitted and other facts about it. And what I learned, a good portion of what I learned was about the drugs that are used to treat HIV. It's called antiretroviral drugs, and they're really expensive, and you can take them before it gets progresses to the AIDS part of the HIV infection, and it can prolong your life for years and years and years. So, like Magic Johnson, for example, he's been infected with HIV, but he's been able to, live a normal life with it because he's able to put forth the money to for these drugs so he can live. So, but these countries in Africa that are having this problem of with the high infection rates, their mortality rates increases a lot because they're not able to pay for these really expensive drugs.
Um, I did think that was really interesting. And then he kind of also goes into why he may think that different places may have different, um, I guess, percentage of people with AIDS. And it's kind of hard to tell because he talks about like money and how the income in different places, it can affect it, but it's not always how you think. Like he showed Tanzania in Africa, and he showed places there with different income levels. And actually, the higher income levels were the ones that had more AIDS, which I think is kind of interesting because we're always like, oh, poor people, they don't take care of themselves or use condoms or whatever, and that's when they get AIDS. And obviously, that's not always the case. And then also in Kenya, he showed just different provinces could be different. And so you really, really can't just say, oh, well, I don't know, just put a blanket statement on it. So one thing I really thought was interesting is that he says that war isn't really a factor, because he showed two different countries, one that was super peaceful and then one that was in war. And the one that was in war was actually doing a lot better. So I thought that was really weird, because my country is Afghanistan, and they have been in war for decades, and they blame most of their problems on that. They're like, oh, we're in poverty because war sucks all our resources out, and that's why we have all these problems and such like that. And I think that's interesting, and it kind of shows that you can't just blame it on that, because there's obviously a lot more to it than that. Um, so that was really interesting to me. And then another thing he says is he refers to it now as in a steady state, which means it's kind of just not changing, which is still at about 1% of the population having AIDS. But the thing I thought that was weird about that is he said that it's not getting better, it's just stopped getting worse, which is kind of difficult to think about, because you'd think over the years, people know more about AIDS, and there's more things that you can do to prevent it and more knowledge about it, and you'd think it would get better, but it really hasn't. So I thought that that was kind of a hard thing to hear. Um, y'all ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the second video, which is called Filthy Water Made Drinkable. And I'll just go ahead and start with that. But he takes water and just puts a bunch of stuff in it that we think of as super crazy and be like, oh, that wouldn't be in our water. But in a lot of places, they do get it out of streams and ponds and crazy places, and there really can be that stuff in there, and it's really not that far-fetched. And to see water that's that gross and think that that's what people really have to drink is kind of crazy, because we're like, oh, okay, it's a little dirty, and I think we kind of put it off as gross, but we don't really think about it as a big deal, and we don't think about it as deadly by any means, and we're like, okay, it's just whatever, and we just kind of shrug it aside and don't really worry about it. But it really is a problem, and he was saying, like, in like the first 2 minutes of him speaking, he already said that it had killed people. So it's just kind of crazy. And then we think about it as, oh, well, that's a problem in undeveloped countries or something like that. But then he talks about Katrina and when New Orleans was hit, and how it took 5 days to get water just to the Superdome, which was a huge gathering place for people. And that's, I don't know, we have all kinds of technology and money here, and it doesn't seem like it should take that long. And if it takes that long here, we can imagine how much worse it would be in other places. So.
I thought it was a really interesting video. I've drank a lot of filtered water before. I do a lot of hiking and camping and things like that. And hiking, you don't take a whole lot of water. It's really heavy. So we would take filters and we drink water from creeks and rivers and streams. And that, I mean, it was good water and it was filtered. I knew it was clean, but it still didn't taste always the best. Some streams better than others. And so it just kind of gave some perspective on what really these people drink. What I thought was interesting was this invention that he has can revolutionize water and how people get water in very poor places in times of natural disasters. But how much does it really cost, and how easy is it to get those to these places? Is what I would ask. I mean, there's got to be a lot of effort, money put into production, because if it works as well as it does, it probably isn't cheap. And then, how will it really be utilized by the people there? I think, when we talk about Katrina and New Orleans, how it took so long to get water there, and I think a lot of times the circumstances just don't allow maybe shipping or people to get places because of flooding, because of weather, because of things. And so I think it will definitely help, but I guess I'm curious as to what the costs are for production and really getting that to those places. And then, other than natural disasters, just in very poor places, will they take care of those things? If they haven't had something like that before, what are they going to do with it? Will they know how to really use it? Not that it's hard to use, but I don't know, if it's something so new, it can be difficult to implement for them to understand and to use it correctly.
Yeah, I kind of agree. He didn't really talk about how much it would cost, and so yeah, like you're saying, it's this new thing. It's really good, and he didn't talk about the cost, so it probably is a little more expensive. However, he did mention that one of the filter things he made, it could served for a family of four for for 3 years for only a half a cent a day, and so I mean that's pretty cheap. So I don't know
Yeah.
if he can if
Yeah.
that's what it is, then I think that'll work
Be
pretty
long
well.
run costs. And that,
Yeah,
you know, when you break it down in the long run, it's definitely cheaper. But do we have the money
yeah,
up front?
just
Which
up
is
front.
that's what's hard.
And that's probably what's hard for a lot of the country, the poorer countries. They don't have that money up front to just pay for it. But at the same time, he also is saying uh, that if you have this water filter system, not only will it help you during times of when times are hard, when there's natural disaster and you are in an emergency situation, but you can also use it every day, and then you don't have to spend all this time to go travel to a stream to bring the water back, like many of the people do in these poorer countries. If they can just, get water that's nearby and filter it right then and there, they'll save so much time, and then that time could be used for other more productive things. And so that will also help with other Millennium Developmental Goals. And so I think this invention of his will help many developmental goals, and yeah, it's pretty great.
So I think we all thought both of the videos were really interesting and educational, and it's just cool to be able to learn these kinds of things and open your mind to it.